Decoding market trends, winning in 2026 and beyond. Here at the MSS Miami, we're delighted to welcome back Jay McBain, Chief Analyst, Channels, Partnerships, Alliances, and Ecosystems at Omdia. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
And great to see you in this updated role, wider role. Would love to hear your thoughts on the state of play for the market, and also if you could perhaps touch on your recent developments and anything you think is pertinent.
I'll do exactly that.
Fantastic. Well, I'll be here in the background, but you have the floor.
All right. Well, thank you so much. So first of all, I want to kind of start with the framework of where we are, and I'll start with kind of an interesting frame. If you go look at the Fortune 500 today, all the companies we know and love, the brands that we may look at as consumers as leading the charge, one thing sticks out in the Fortune 500. If you go back 20 years from today, 52% of the companies no longer exist. If you're not in the Fortune 500 and don't have big pockets and big budgets to buy your way out of problems, 71% of tech companies don't even make it 10 years. So when you start to look at our industry at the highest level, you think about the 1960s or 1970s, the mainframe mini era, August the 12th, 1981, a Florida story in Boca Raton, Florida, Bill Gates flying in to meet with IBM. But that introduction of the first PC with Microsoft DOS version 1 triggered a 20-year era after the 20 years of mainframe. And from the 80s and 90s, we lived through client server, small company in San Francisco, Mark Benioff at Salesforce triggered the SaaS industry. And then, a number of years later, 7 or 8 years later, AWS, Jeff Bezos came along. But the cloud era became 20 years as well. 20, 20, 20. March of 2023, we kicked off this new era in AI. That's when our neighbors, our friends, our family, non-technical folks saw ChatGPT for the first time. That's when they came to us as tech people and said, did we just light up Skynet? So we're on course here. And I won't remind you during client server, the richest people in the world and the biggest companies into the cloud era. Again, the richest people in the world and the biggest companies in the world. Well, this new AI era is going to trigger a couple of trillionaires, and we're just getting started. Jeff Bezos now lives in Florida as well. So there's a story around Florida in terms of this, but that's at the biggest level. And that's what happens. And over the course of 20 years, we can see here by the end of 2024, Apple is no longer the leading company in the world. NVIDIA and Microsoft overtook Apple. That's how things change. And this is how our industry changes around these big eras. So our industry today, well, AI is predicted to be a $7 trillion infrastructure build out, and obviously a big consumer component of that in the first couple of years, with NVIDIA becoming the most valuable company, with OpenAI getting to 2 billion users, monthly active users, faster than any product in history. But on the business side, we're watching as this industry, when you talk about $7 trillion, is bigger than our entire industry, which is the hardware, the software, the services, tech services, and telco. All combined this year will finish off at 5.3 trillion. This is the smallest flower shop to the biggest bank, biggest governments. This is the entire market that we're in. And we are the fastest growing industry, growing at 7%, while our customers in world GDP grows at 2.2. Today, we'll be talking about several opportunities that grow double, triple, quadruple this big number, and where partners are really positioned well. In our industry, 70.1% of it goes through the channel. That's how it's transacted. 96% of it's partner assisted in some way. When you count up all the consulting, design, implementation, integrations, managed services, all the 7 partners on average that McKinsey would say surround every customer, we have almost every deal that have many partners. And for years and years and years, we'd count up the MSPs, we'd count up the VARs, the system integrators, the ISVs. There's 20 different partner types that are trying to come in. 78% of digital agencies are tech services firms. 81% of accountants are now tech services firms. So this was always the way we kind of counted up millions of companies, tens of millions of people that are playing for those 7 roles around the customer. Just a few weeks ago, we published a top 1,000 list. This is your Fortune list for channel partners. And here's a cool thing. 1,000 companies out of the millions that I just showed 1,000 companies drive 2/3 of all tech services in the world. It gets even better. The 30 logos in the middle drive more services than the 970 logos on the outside. The 970 logos on the outside drive more tech services than the next million companies combined. If you ever thought we were in the 80/20 rule, I would say we're in the 99.9, 0.1% rule when it comes to this. It's truly the first global list. Again, all 2/3 of all tech services in the world are delivered by only 1,000 companies. As it breaks down by type, like GSIs and MSPs and MSSPs, we know that 238 of them are managed service providers. But we know that, for example, GSIs, only 20 companies deliver 23% of all managed services in the world. Almost a quarter of the market just goes through 20 companies who you wouldn't think as managed service providers, but they absolutely do that in the market today. So we're watching top down at a level of granular detail than we've never seen before. Managed services is having a moment on the global scale. $608 billion this year delivered in managed services. By the way, making this industry 1.5 times larger than the SaaS industry. If you think of Salesforce and ServiceNow and Workday and Marketo, NetSuite, HubSpot, all the companies we know and love on Wall Street, this industry is 1.5 times bigger. It's also 1.5 times bigger than the hyperscalers. Not just AWS, Microsoft, Google, but you include Oracle and Alibaba and IBM and everybody all the way down. 1.5 times larger. It's a really large market, and it happens to be growing at 13. Talking about growing almost double what the industry is growing, which is already growing 3 or 4x what your customers are growing. So this is how it spreads around the world. This is how it spreads by size of managed service provider in terms of the scale of their business that's recurring. Again, GSIs might be less than 10% of their revenue is managed, but they still drive 23% of the world's $608 billion number. So lots of ways to look at this market, but suggested that over the next 5 to 10 years, as we move through agentic AI into physical AI, into the promise of AI, this will continue to drive double-digit growth every year compounded for partners. We're seeing a huge shift. I sold laptops in the 1990s, so I remember that Bill Gates, meeting really, really well when I was a kid. But the fact of the matter is, what back then partners would have been about 84% hardware and all the services wrapped around, it's completely switched. As of 2025, it's now 84% software and services with only 16% hardware. And when you look at a profitability perspective, it's only 13% hardware when you look at the P&L. So changing partner, but it changes to look like this. We're starting to migrate around a customer journey. And we look at the hundreds of services in green, 28 moments before the customer buys. We look at all the services at the point of sale, not just taking the money, but building the 7-layer stack, doing the co-creation, co-innovation, co-development of all of this. And then 2/3 of our industry is now subscription and consumption based. So the fun just starts. That's the first 30 days with the customer. Now we're working on upsell, cross-sell, enrichment every 30 days forever in managed services or more traditional implementations, integration projects. But partners are looking at this, looking at multipliers now. How do I make, $2 or $3 for every dollar that my hyperscaler friend makes, my SaaS company that I work with makes, my cybersecurity company makes? I'm looking at that type of growth, and growth of services right now is faster than products. So customers need more help. They can't find the cyber talent. They can't find the AI talent. They definitely can't find the infrastructure talent. And that's why this industry is growing in double digits. But managed service providers, smart ones, are looking at every moment, hundreds of services before, during, and after the transaction with the customer. So we move over now to a very different looking partner. When you ask managed service providers or ask VARs and you kind of say, what are you doing today looking differently around that customer journey? Well, 56% are not only consulting, which we've always done, but charging for it. It's now a material part of the business. Designing, architecting deals, these 7-layer stacks, co-creating inside those deals. Doing the actual integration work, implementation work, looking like a system integrator a third of the time. Obviously, when you ask every company in the world, 2/3 of them are now doing managed services. That's why there's 335,000 companies with at least one managed contract. And this is the shocking one, 44% of partners are building software. They're actually writing and coding agents today for agentic AI. So this is a really different partner that does 3.2 different things. So don't call me an MSP or an MSSP. Don't call me a VAR. Don't call me a system integrator. Don't call me an ISV. We're all over the customer and we're doing all kinds of things. So we do on average 3.2 different business models as an industry. So don't typecast us. And for the first time, we're not asking vendors for more leads, which we've done for 43 years. We're asking vendors to recognize all the stuff we do before, during, and after the transaction, and perhaps start incentivizing it that way, moving the money from the point of sale where it was for so long and start spreading it out like peanut butter to drive every moment in the customer journey. Whether it's a transactional moment or a non-transactional moment, it doesn't matter. So this is where we are. If I kind of talk about who's going to win in this next 20-year era, it all comes down to one slide. If I look at the biggest hyperscalers, if I look at, again, those big SaaS companies, if I look at the big cyber companies, start to see the work that, CrowdStrike and Palo Alto and Cisco Splunk and Microsoft and Zscaler and Okta, all the way down the list. But you get to look at all of the major platforms. They're building out partnerships because they realize platforms are synonymous with partnerships. It's not a pricing model that brings everything together. It's not a UI or UX on top of disparate products. It is building out tech integrations, which the majority buyer in our industry now was born after 1982. Majority buyer is a millennial. Their number one criteria is integrations. It's not service support levels. It's not price. It's not your brand reputation, which it was for baby boomers and Gen X. It's different. So if you're not building up and down that 7-layer stack, and if you're not integrated, they'll buy a product 80% as good as the next one if it integrates better. That's why so many MSSPs, so many MSPs now are in the integration world. Now, the services and channel partnerships. If you're in cybersecurity, 91.6% flows through the channel. So there's deep channel relationships around the world that drive this. But there's 6 other people at the table too who are not transactional. And building out services and channel partnerships is key, along with the integrations. Building out the alliances with all the major cyber platforms, with all the major hyperscalers, SaaS, infrastructure, telco, distribution. There's platforms now everywhere. And building alliances, even if you compete in the morning and you're best friends and partnering by the afternoon. The co-opetition is taking the next level in AI. And then finally, go to market. The 28 moments before that sale are all partner driven. It's the ebook that's written by the partner that the customer reads. It's the podcast they listen to. It's the event they go to. It is the consulting gig, the design work, the configuration work. All 28 moments are really partner driven. And if you don't have go to market, co-selling, co-marketing, all the co-development, co-creation, if you don't have forever, 2/3 of our industry subscription consumption, if you don't have the co-keeping, working together with partners, you're not going to win. You're going to be one of the 52% of companies that don't make it through the AI era. And so this is where the economics are changing. This is where things like point systems are coming in place to replace these point of sale systems we've had for so long. So everything changes around this. You start to think about this 3 to 5 years that we're in. Out of the 20-year era, the first 3 to 5 years will be generative on the consumer side, turning agentic on the business side. You start to look at where the opportunity is. And if you read any newspaper or listen to anything on TV today, it's been quite underwhelming from a business perspective. And while consumer, like I said, NVIDIA shot to the top, OpenAI became the biggest, fastest growing company ever. Consumer is it's absolutely every day there's $100 billion or $200 billion agreements somewhere, big numbers being thrown around. Where MIT wrote a report a month ago that 95% of AI proof of concepts are not reaching their goals. Well, they only talked to 52 people and they used 6 months as a target, but the research wasn't good, but the comment is there that we all feel this moment of underwhelming growth. And this is where we'll kind of go through. One thing we were nervous about is the partner going to be involved at the level it was in cloud, in client server, et cetera? And the answer is yes. In 88% of cases, customers are going to be using partners to drive agentic models. And for those 44% of partners today coding agents, and which I think will become 64 and then 84 in the next, 3 to 5 years. This is where the opportunity lies. This is actually, of all the different slices that I showed of hardware, software, services, this is the fastest growing compounded growth rate for partners. And around agentic AI and generative AI, moving out to 2030 as we start to move into some more physical AI, this 35.3% growth rate in an industry that's growing at 7 and a world economy that's growing at 2.2 presents the number one opportunity for partners of all types around the world. Phase one has always been about um, agentic generative AI helping our sales and marketing internally, our invoicing, billing, our service tickets, all the ways that we run our companies. Obviously, from a security perspective, a ton of help in terms of telemetry and how we're going to, the good guys stay in front of the bad guys. But this phase is really driven through software. And one of the things we were thinking about 2 years ago in business was, is there going to be a new product like Copilot or Agentforce or the Now platform, ServiceNow, that comes in and becomes a product that everybody needs to buy? And the answer is no. It's just going to show up in the tech stacks that customers have been investing in the last 20, 25 years. If you happen to be calling on a restaurant, they'll be running Toast or Square or Clover, people running around with iPads. They're going to see agentic for the first time through those platforms. It'll see a Toast agent to help them with food ordering or staffing or working with Uber Eats or whatever else they need to do. That's where it's going to show up. In a company with 100, 150 people, it's going to show up in the vice presidents. You can see here the CMO, the CRO, already spending $50+ billion to build out their tech stacks. They're going to rely on agentic AI inside those tech stacks they've already invested in. So they're waiting for a marketer. They're waiting for Marketo or Eloqua or Pardot or HubSpot to give them what they need. And then they have 15,348 ISVs that play in the MarTech space that will also be connected side door and back door to these agents. But understand, this is going to be a SaaS play in the next 3 to 5 years. As we get out 5 to 15 years, we're into this physical mode. We're already talking humanoid robots. This will change everything. As Bill Gates thought there would be a PC in every home, there's definitely going to be a humanoid robot or two in every home. Once they get the hands correct, I think version 10 of ChatGPT by that time will be ready to go. Tesla on the right-hand side has already made thousands of these robots. They just don't have the hands yet. The dexterity to do the dishes, to do the laundry, to walk upstairs properly. But when we solve for those things, this becomes everything. And a point where we don't do the dishes or laundry or mow our lawns anymore. The world is made for humans by humans. The best cat litter robot or the best Roomba robot is a human using tools that we already own. So this comes, and it's a very physical space. Drones and self-driving is a huge channel opportunity, but a huge security risk as well. But here's the promise of AI, and not enough people are talking about this. The promise of AI is that 99% of the world's business data today has not been trained into models, hasn't been cleansed, hasn't been indexed, and it's very trepidatious from a business perspective to think about taking data and putting it out into consumer models. So that's why things have been slow for 2 years. And this is a 10-year arc moving to a 20-year arc. Every flight that we've taken, everyone on this in this event sits on a Sabre system put in place in 1964. Every banking transaction we've ever made, every withdrawal, every deposit, every one of us sits on an IBM mainframe put in place in the 60s and 70s. When they take that business data, 99% of it, 83% of that sits in cold storage at the edge. That cold storage isn't ready to index and infer. It isn't ready to feed. It isn't ready for the edge to cloud networking capabilities to get this done. And the closer it is to the edge, the bigger the opportunity for partners. It's not all happening at the big hyperscaler data centers. It's going to happen from edge to hybrid, colo. It's going to happen in virtualized ways. It's going to happen completely from edge to cloud. This is the promise of where we are. And smart partners are starting to build out their strength, build out their ability to execute before, during, and after the transaction with the customer, and building out the practices necessary. to not only manage this, but to secure it, to make it compliant, to build out the regulatory and governance challenges that we're facing. But this is where the promise, and when we overestimate what's going to happen in the first 2 years and underestimate in the first 10, this is where the smartest top 1,000, for example, partners are investing the most into. And I'm going to kind of finish off here because there's new data, and you may have seen from me in the past, talk about these first 28 moments and working with partners and working, through a customer cycle as they're getting smart and as we move around. And these are the same considered purchases, like when we buy a car. The average of us spend 28 moments getting smarter than the sales rep at the dealership when we buy a car. Same thing when I'm buying $1 million in cyber software. Some people spend 2 moments, some people spend 52 moments, but this is kind of the average bell curve. And when we're in a considered purchase, we're getting to a point now. Canalys, the company I was with, was acquired by Omdia, which you see over my shoulder, which is a part of Informa TechTarget, part of the bigger Informa. Regardless of all that, we're starting to get really good at buyer intent. If I look at every deal, and by the way, this is a real deal. If I map out the 28 moments of how AstraZeneca went to spend millions of dollars, this is what we've been waiting for 30, 40 years. We've always known MQLs, marketing qualified leads, and who's reading ebooks and who's doing what on social media and going to what event or listening to what podcast. CMOs built that big MarTech stack that I talked about for that. The sales tech stack, taking a customer and doing a proof of concept, doing a demo, working the deal, closing the deal to the right-hand side, and that's probably in January, February here, has always been well understood. But when 96% of deals are partner-led, partner-assisted, partner-surrounded, we're for the first time have the light blue boxes in the deal. And I'll tell you, and you can see pretty quickly, that this deal closed in December. The 5 projects that were run by, in this case, NTT, Software One, and Yash, is what closed this deal. And a couple things out of this. One is that obviously partners are driving most of the deals. And in a lot of cases, vendors will, lose a deal without ever knowing there was a deal because there was no sharing, there was no arming these partners to, go in and drive the right projects. But in the end, one interesting thing here is if you look at the timeline, these partners didn't win this deal in December. They would have won this deal probably back in August or September. And then, like everything else, went into contracting and redlining and Gantt charts of when the projects should start and all that work. So while our CMO is looking at MQL, somebody reading an ebook, we're coming forward and saying, no, this is a real deal. This is a pharma company, AstraZeneca, about to spend a couple $1 million. They're already spending hundreds of thousands of dollars across, 5 different projects. This is a real deal. This is not a qualified lead about to hand over to be a sales qualified lead. For those of us, this becomes the holy grail. If 96% of the deals are surrounded by partners and there's 7 partners in the deal, what can we do from a technology perspective? What can we do from a partnering perspective to be talking all through these moments, before, during, and after them, to ensure that we're in the deal too? We're adding value to the customer. And it may be the partner, the MSP, the MSSP. It could be the consultants, but it's definitely the vendors, it's the distributors, and the customer all working together as a team. There's lots of things going on, but now we're in a future where through agentic models and kind of humanless, piles of millions and trillions of data points, we can get to every deal, looking like this. And the holy grail in our industry is this. If at some moment I saw my entire TAM, my target addressable market size, at this level of granularity, and I saw those top 1,000 partners, I saw the other 1 million partners, I saw everybody doing everything. This drives customer value, this drives customer outcomes, it drives partnering at a level that we've never seen before. And I think for 50% of companies who will be wildly successful, a number of trillionaires that get created in this next era, it all becomes around that. Partnering becomes core to the future, as it has been in the past. But now there's no way to the customer directly without partnering. And this is going to be the make or break moment for everyone in our industry. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think that's a great vision, and perhaps it could herald the end of the cycle of channel. Do you know what? I'll go direct and make more money. I can't do it. I'll go back to the channel.
Right.
Hopefully that will be there. Um, what's next for you with your new Omdia hats?
Yeah, well, the first thing is partnerships are cool. We happen to be the cool kids on the block right now, so that there isn't a hyperscaler event coming up, or there isn't a big SaaS event or a big infrastructure type of event anywhere in the world. The 352 events that go on without wanting a partnership person to be out on the main stage. When somebody's in Las Vegas and they rent out the Sphere and put the word platform on the side, wouldn't it be great to have a platform expert, on that main stage right next to the CEO, anointing them as a leader in being more partner friendly than the next company? So for me personally, and for all of my team across Omdia, we're busy at work, flying all over the world, trying to make sure this message, partner first and partner every time,
Mm,
is there. And we understand the power of, managed services and MSSPs. We understand the power of all these partners around the customer every 30 days forever. So again, we're not going to, lay down. This is our time, after decades of maybe pushed off to the side. We're going to take advantage of this being our time to shine.
mm.
And finally, the benefits and the success, that channels and partnerships and alliances and ecosystems have are now paramount. And it's at the board level, across every Wall Street firm that says, we got to be better than our competitors in this space.
Fantastic. Well, that's a big call to action and a great sentiment. Jay, I know Miami and South Florida is close to your heart. So thank you for coming back again for our seventh annual. It's been fantastic having you on again. The MSS Miami is richer for having you on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.